My name is Stefan Bauer. I work as an information architect. I'm self-employed, so I have my own company and help people to get the information structure done well. I work with many departments together, and also I'm an expert on branding. Actually, my background is web development. I started web development 20 years ago with PHP and MySQL, and then I think 12 years ago I switched over to SharePoint and tried to apply the things I already knew from a web development perspective to SharePoint. Meanwhile, a lot of time, because I tried it out when the first beta versions came out and played around, was looking if I can do the web parts that I did back in the classic experience to move to the modern experience. And now I'm currently working on how to make a story about how to make reusable components that you use throughout other projects, not only for a single one. Actually, the SharePoint Framework was a good step towards regular web development, and the thing I like the most about SPFX is that you only have to worry about just JavaScript anymore, so all the web parts are just JavaScript code. So even if you do back-end code, you use JavaScript, and even from the front end. Back in the old days in the classic experience, you had to have C# in your skill set, and you also had, for the front end stuff, JavaScript, and this is now you have to only focus on one programming language. Well, back in the classic experience, there were a lot of functionalities there that are currently not available in SPFX. So, for example, web part to web part communication, which is absolutely missing. But on the other hand, the SPFX framework is focusing on mobile, also on tablet, how it looks there, and I guess there are some challenges with the web part to web part communication from a UX perspective, because how do you know when a web part somewhere in the page changes? And this will be pretty challenging in future. But also the citizen developer store, where you can just simply add JavaScript and HTML to a page without using the SPFX at all. The favorite part of the SharePoint framework is the extensibility from my perspective, because you can use all the libraries that are out there through the node modules that you tend to use in regular web development. And also the frameworks, it's pretty open to use different frameworks, except some limitations with Angular, for example. But you can use Vue, you can use, and I think one thing that is really good when it comes out, which is currently in progress, is the Angular elements, because it moves towards a web standard development through the web components that implemented in Angular elements. Actually, it's not something that I would add to the SharePoint framework. I would remove something from the SharePoint framework, because currently now it supports no framework web parts, it supports React framework web parts and Knockout framework web parts. React is a no-brainer from this perspective, because Microsoft built all their interfaces using React. That's okay, but I think Knockout isn't that useful to have it in the SPFX. What I want to see in future is more an extensibility model that you can use different frameworks and plug it in the generator. The biggest challenge for a regular SharePoint developer is that they have to switch from C# to JavaScript and use different tools, and no more that much Visual Studio, but more Visual Studio Code or other web development editors. And I think this is the biggest challenge for the casual web for SharePoint developers. On the other hand, for the web developers, there are so many specifics in there from the SharePoint framework that are specific to SharePoint that it might be hard for a regular web developer to start working with SPFX. Yeah, from my perspective, there are still some features missing that we had in the classic experience that should be implemented in SPFX. Like I told you before, the web part to web part communications, some more about the branding side that we used previously. I think I want to see this in future, that we have a comparable feature set that we had in the classic experience and still have in the classic experience. So I think one big issue is more from the organizational side of the whole development, because you already built your classical experience components and how you move those over to the modern experience. I created a style guide for where you can really test out all your implementations you have with the classic experience, then adapt it to the modern experience and see where some CSS changes and feature changes are required to make it running in this modern experience.